water skiers out there. So that's what those subregions are. And the story here is that while we've, been through, some real challenges related to inventory, comparing the first half of this April with the first half of last April, we've actually seen an increase in inventory in some of our markets. A 20% increase along 880. West Cocoa almost doubles, 51% up to 104 units listed for sale. Central Cocoa, 32% up with 188 on the market. But come on to this side of the hill, 680 corridor, Tri-Valley. You can see that La Miranda drops a few, and we're down about 50 units here in the Tri-Valley as well. Go over to the Delta, though, and they're up a bit. So what do these numbers mean? Well, first, these numbers reflect just the single-family detached homes that were listed for sale on the MLS. It doesn't include condos and townhomes. And it shows that while, people are freaking out about a lot of things, they're unsure about how real estate transactions are going to go. Apparently, sellers in some areas are getting the message that, maybe now is the time to sell. These are pretty significant increases in inventory in these markets. Now, I said read the fine print. So what we're going to do next is focus exclusively on the Tri-Valley and see where that 14% drop in inventory is really coming from. So here we are. Wow. Some big changes here. You can see Alamo is down 20%, Danville down 20%, Dublin down 33%, Livermore basically unchanged, we're basically unchanged, and San Ramon down a few units. So here's where you need to really read the fine print, because when you look at Alamo down 20%, oh my goodness, that's significant. But then you look at the real numbers and it's only a 10-unit drop. So if you've got clients that are, say, freaking about a percentage change that they read about, always go back to the base numbers to see, well, what's that percentage based on? So in this case, yeah, these are all, Alamo, Danville, Dublin, those are all double-digit drops in homes for sale. But when you look at, first off, okay, what was the sample period? Well, we're only looking at 3 weeks in April compared to 3 weeks in April last year. So always think critically about where numbers are coming from. The takeaway, though, is, yeah, we're down on inventory April to April. So what does this mean for sales prices? And this is where this confidence in real estate, depending on where you are in transactions, is really starting to show up. We're going to pull back for a second and take a look at median sales price, again, from that sub-regional level. And you can see, with the exception of La Miranda that's on sale for $1.385, that was hilarious. Every other region, comparing first half of April to first half of April, is up, and up significantly. We didn't really see double-digit price appreciation at all in 2019. And now as we look at these sub-regions, 880 up 14, West Cocoa up 11, Central Contra Costa, no big change, but Tri-Valley, 10% increase, median at 1.3, and the Delta up at 560, 750 as well. So this is telling me that a few things have yet to happen. Number one, we have yet to really see challenges related to purchase financing impact our real estate market. And for the lenders that are on the call, I'd love to get your take on this, because I understand that particularly the jumbo non-conforming loans, underwriting is tight, maybe a little bit difficult to get those loans, but based on these numbers, buyers are able to secure purchase financing, and they're able to secure purchase financing to the extent that they can push up sales prices compared to where we were last year. And also keep in mind, these numbers, they were pulled right from I don't want to say the middle of the shelter in place, because that would imply I know when the shelter in place is going to end. But these are 3 weeks when we were knee deep in shelter in place. So the takeaway here is buyers are figuring out, with the help of their team, how to put these deals together and how to push prices up a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my slides, let you guys chime in, see if there's any questions. We seen anything, Eric? Any comments, questions?
Not yet. I know we do have a couple of lenders on, so I know Jen.
Now, they're usually pretty shy and don't like to speak up.
They don't speak up. Jen's, I just thought her, but no questions quite yet.
Okay.
So
we're gonna, if it's okay, Eric, I'll bounce back to my slides and we'll keep going. So great. What have we learned so far? We've learned that inventory, Tri-Valley restricted, Sales prices, though, pretty darn strong. But this is all academic if nothing's actually selling. So that's where we're going to pick up the presentation with sales activity. So stand by just a second here. And we're going to go back. So here's where our median sales price was, 1.3. And again, just to give you that statistics lesson, median sales price means that half of the units that sold during the first half of April 2020 sold for above 1.3 and half sold for below 1.3. And that reflects a 10% increase from the same period last year. So what's actually selling? Well, sorry, here we are. That was the Tri-Valley aggregation. We're not quite there yet. We're going to take a look at the individual communities here in the Tri-Valley, and you can see that it was San Ramon that was really pushing that price increase with a 16% jump up. Pleasanton up 5%. We're at 1.3. You can see Livermore up 4%. Dublin basically no change, but Alamo and Danville, really high-priced areas, you can see that both of those communities coming down slightly. Now, why that 8% drop? Well, number one, it could reflect clearly an actual drop in prices, but also understand we're looking at 3 weeks of real estate activity, which means that things could change in the second half of April, and these numbers could change as well. So this is where I want to circle back to think critically. So if you're sharing this information with your clients, clearly, comparing these 3-week periods one year to the other, there were some changes, but this is just a 3-week snapshot. So, you may want to, if you're going to share this information with your clients, if they think, oh my goodness, there's all kinds of bargains in Danville, well, things may change as we see the rest of April. Or, people are saying, well, I'm clearly going to be priced out of Pleasanton, they're up 5%. Again, that could shift the other direction as well. So let's now take a look at sales activity. Here is our sub-regional aggregation. And the real story here is, where were the big drops? 880 comes down 33%. West Cocoa, that 18% looks dramatic, but it's really only a 9-unit drop. Central Cocoa, that's a large market. You got Walnut Creek in there, and that 44% drop, that's legit with only 66 homes sold during the first half of April compared to the same period last year. La Miranda, yeah, it's down 15%, but again, look at the sample sizes, 27 to 23, really no change. Tri-Valley, we're down almost 30%. That is a legit change. And this is where I'd really like to hear from lenders to see, hey, we're seeing prices go up, but we're seeing this drop in sales activity. Is that a function of just less inventory, or is that a function of, we just can't get the financing together? And that's clearly not a dig at the lenders. It's just a question that I'm curious about, how people are putting together purchase financing, and if the almost 30% drop in sales activity is just driven by a drop in inventory, or if there's some other factors as well. Delta down 20%. So I do want to stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna get the lenders out there. I'm gonna get them to talk at some point. So any questions there that lenders wanted to chime in yet?
We did have a question from John asked, are these sales which went into contract before or after the shelter in place?
So it's both, John. I'd have to dig into the individual stats to see how many went pending before the shelter in place. So given that we saw a big drop off in pendings after the shelter in place was in effect, I've got to say that, and also we're looking at, a 15-day period, days on market hovering around. Well, that's the other thing too, John, that makes it hard to answer this question, is that our days on market stats went out the window as well, because we had a lot of agents saying, hey, I need to, I need to suspend my listing in the MLS. So long babbling answer to your question, John, I don't know. But we're just looking at, given that days on market was getting longer already starting in 2019, excuse me, starting to sound like Gavin Newsom a little bit there. That was hilarious. And things were getting a little bit longer coming into 2020 as well. I'm assuming that some of them went into contract before shelter in place, but it couldn't be all of them. Jennifer, thank you for that observation about the no hangups on financing.
She's unmuted right now. So Jen, did you want to?
Bring it.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Hey everybody. I'm open to answering any questions that you have, but the financing pieces are really on a case by case with each individual lender. We're all processing and applying the temporary guideline changes are for the COVID-19 so Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA, VA, USDA have all come out with some temporary restrictions or temporary overlays that are changing the climate just a little bit, and each individual lender is processing that differently. So you really want to talk to your preferred lenders on a case-by-case basis and ask them specifically, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Things like FHA is no longer available, jumbos aren't an option, Wells Fargo has stopped lending to high balance and jumbos. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we're happy to clear up anything that you need.
So speaking to the jumbo market specifically, I know Dave, you mentioned that in some of the markets that are, at the higher price point. Are you seeing any issues at that higher price point with financing and jumbo loans?
So for Caliber specifically, Wells Fargo did pull back on their jumbo lending, and Chase has made it a little bit more challenging for us to be able to proceed forward with true jumbo financing now. So we are kind of modifying that. There are opportunities for us to stay within the conventional realm and do more of what's called an 80-10-10 loan. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the clients have to come in with 10%. There's other opportunities for us to say, if the client's putting 20% down, we just break the loan up a little bit, still with two loans, and put them into a modified version of the 80-10-10. So we're using a first and a second, but it makes it so if there's any potential changes that might come down the line. So there's still opportunity for us to be up in the upper price points without a problem.
Jennifer, Jim here. Are you seeing any dislocation in high balance loans compared to what probably should be priced?
I mean, the rates are not as advantageous in the high balance realm as they are in the conventional realm. And mainly the reason for that is with the mortgage-backed securities and the quantitative easing that the government does, there isn't the support from the government in the high balance realm. It's only in the conventional 5-10 loan amounts and below that they actually apply the quantitative easing. So the mortgage-backed securities are usually made up of a combination of the conforming loan limit, conforming loans, as well as a smattering of some of the high balance. So the rates are just a little bit higher. There isn't quite the same market appetite for those particular loans as there are for the conforming. So it is a little bit on the higher side right now, but not anything that's out of the realm of what we still consider fantastic rates. So again, it comes down to a case-by-case basis, especially because conventional is risk-based. So the stronger the borrower, the better the rates are going to be.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. All right, Dave.
Sure.
All right. Well, it only took me 20 minutes, but I got the lenders to speak up. So Jennifer, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And in all seriousness, when you look at the variables that are impacting the real estate market and issues of supply versus demand, when you talk about demand, it really comes down to the ability for buyers to secure purchase financing, or if they've got cash in the bank, to make the all cash offers. So that's why I call out the lenders so often, because they're really the variables on that demand side. And if you want to know what's going to happen in the market, especially where we're in an inventory restricted market like we here are in the Tri-Valley, where new residential construction is stopped for the foreseeable future, and where we've got anti-growth sentiments in our communities, really the thing that's going to change is the ability for buyers to secure purchase financing. So if you want to predict the future, get to know Jennifer, get to know the lenders, because they're going to tell you what's coming down the pike and what your clients are going to be able to do, and ultimately what the market's going to do. So I've got another couple slides to finish up this 90-minute presentation. Nothing? I got nothing? Okay. All right. I got 2 thumbs up. All right. And Joe's looking good. Okay. So here we go. What's going to happen? And before I share the the pending sales. Pending sales was something that in all the years I've been doing market update presentations, I've never had to report on pending sales for this reason. If you put a home on the market, especially during the last 7-8 years, guess what happened to it? Anyone? It's sold. So when we talk about pendings, there was this direct relationship. I wasn't even reporting on pendings because I knew that, limited inventory, you put it on the market, it sells. Boom, boom, boom. Why report on 3 things when you report on 2 things? Well, guess what? We're all freaking out. We don't know what's going to happen. Let's take a look at pending sales. Here we go. I'm going to share some slides. Stand by while I click. And here we go. So there's our sales activity. Here we are looking at things specifically in the Tri-Valley. You can see that we're pretty much down in actual homes sold. The percentages look dramatic, but when you look at real numbers, 30 versus 23, yeah, that is a drop, but we're only halfway through April. You guys are feeling this. Let's not spend a lot of time on sales activity. Let's take a look at pendings. Here is our sub-regional aggregation, and across the board, we are down 880, 44%, West Cocoa, 45%. Now, we're looking not only at dramatic percentages, but these are real units, particularly when you get to the Tri-Valley, where we're down the most at 68%. As much as I want you to think critically and look beyond the numbers, you can't argue with 136 pendings last April versus 44 this April. That is legit. That's a real number. So, based on what Jennifer has told us that, yeah, it's still possible to get, secure purchase financing. That's great. That said, we're looking at a slow April, and we're also probably looking at a pretty slow May as well. I know that we're all looking forward to seeing some relief in terms of the shelter in place, but guess what? We got to get through the next few weeks, and it's going to be pretty slow. That's our Tri-Valley aggregation. Let's take a look at the actual numbers, and boom, look who's driving this. Those Alamo down 75%, Danville down 80%. But going back to my whole concept of think critically when you see these numbers, it's 4 units. It's a universe of 25 units last April for Danville. Circle down, though, to Pleasanton, and 8 versus 22, that's legit. So it's not just, statistical mumbo jumbo that's driving all this stuff. That is a legit drop in pending sales, which means we're looking at a slow April, and we're probably looking at a slow May as well. San Ramon is in the mix as well, dropping 60%. So I want to just share 2 other things with you. Oh, well, here's a slide. There's my contact information. Yes, I will email these slides over to Erica, or you can contact me directly at davids@bayeast.org. I want to share just 2 other thoughts with you as I wrap up this 17-minute presentation. And yes, I do use the metric system, so that's where I get 17 minutes from. That also was hilarious because jokes about the metric system are always fantastic. So 2 thoughts. First, as I alluded to earlier, I don't know how long this shelter in place is going to last. Even though we're 30 days into this thing and all we hear on the media is COVID-19, we're still kind of in the early stages of what is happening here. So I'm happy to share these snapshots. I'm happy to share these short periods year to year. But we, in many respects, we pressed a massive reset button on the real estate market. So it's difficult to tell the story. I mean, is this the new normal going forward? Are your clients, even after shelter in place is lifted, are they going to be enthusiastic about traipsing through a home that a bunch of other strangers have been in? We don't know. So this is very, very early in the process. The second thing I want to share is this is a very different crisis than what we experienced during the short sale and foreclosure crisis. And I mention this because during that period, depending on where you were in Alameda County, where unemployment was at 12%, foreclosures and short sales were the real deal. Livermore, clearly impacted by those types of properties. Other side of the hill, there was a period where in Hayward, 40% of the listings were either short sales or foreclosures. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not to be morbid. It's just that whole concept of, failing to plan is planning to fail. And also another opportunity to really, push the relationship you have with your lenders. We don't know if there's going to be a flood of foreclosures coming on the market. But what we do know is that the home buyers that have participated in home ownership in the last 7, 8, 9 years, the underwriting guidelines they followed very different than the underwriting guidelines that really got a lot of people into the foreclosure and short sale crisis in the first place. A lot of those adjustable rate loans that people just simply couldn't afford once they adjusted, they don't exist anymore. The underwriting criteria that home buyers have been subject to over the last few years, very strict. You got to be alive. You got to have a job. You got to have credit. You got to have some savings in the bank. I'm not naive enough to suggest that there will be no foreclosures in the Tri-Valley, that you won't see those kinds of transactions coming. But I will say this, we have yet to see any kind of unemployment statistics for Alameda County yet. Now, probably as soon as I'm done with this webinar, Economic Development Department is going to release the unemployment numbers. We don't know yet. We don't know what the unemployment numbers are going to be for Santa Clara County. We don't know what they're going to be on the peninsula as well. I mentioned this when you think about the individuals that have purchased homes here in the last 5, 8 years, many in the tech sector, many able to work from home, many have money in the bank. It's not all of them. Again, I'm not implying that no one's going to get into trouble if this shelter in place continues and we see unemployment double in Alameda County. At the risk of being insensitive, if unemployment in Alameda County was going to double, that would be about 6%, which is half of what we experienced during the Great Recession. And again, I'm not being insensitive. It's just putting things into context as we try to predict what's going to happen. I cannot emphasize enough, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, pay attention to what the lenders are doing. They've got the information. If you've got clients that are out of work, about loan mods and things like this, be wary of forbearance. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is, you guys are having to come up with new business practices to work within the shelter in place. Same thing with the Bay East Association of Realtors. Yeah, I'm working from home. I'm doing this presentation from home. It's pretty cool. In terms of the other services that Bay East is providing, we're kind of making this whole thing up as we go along. We've been doing these weekly town halls. The next one is on Thursday. I'm able to visit with you today, and I really appreciate the invite. If there's anything else that we can do, please let us know, because your success is directly tied with our success as well. If there's anything that we can do to help you guys stay in business, do not hesitate to reach out. It looks like I've got about 45 minutes left to take questions or make really lame wisecracks or to comment on Joe's beautiful picture.
Thanks, Dave. I was wondering, while we wait for folks to type in questions or unmute themselves and chime in, can you speak a little bit to buyer demand? And that is a loaded question. But in the meetings and the talks that you've done, have you heard anything or seen any trends in what buyer demand is doing? I mean, that's a question I certainly get quite often is, well, the buyers are not around, they're not buying, and obviously we've seen the stats, but if you could spend a few minutes talking to that, that would be great.
Sure. So I've got kind of a cute phrase that I throw out there to kick this off. And the cute phrase is, you can't say work from home without home. And when you think about the tech sector, which is a really important category of buyers because they've got good income, depending what happens with the stock market, they've got those assets they can leverage for home ownership. Many of those jobs are designed to work from home. So, and as I mentioned earlier, I haven't seen the unemployment stats for the tech sector yet, so I don't know how badly they're being impacted by this. But the bottom line is, with so many people working from home, so many people now having the ability to work from home. So there's a gal who's about 25 feet away from me right now who's working from home at our kitchen table. She would love to work from home all the time, and now she can't. Now, we're blessed because we have a home to work from. I can only assume that anybody that's been on the fence about home ownership is looking at this situation and saying, hey, if I can work from home and my job's in the South Bay and there's inventory or there's opportunities in Tracy or even, Contra Costa County or some of the, even Livermore, maybe I can look a little further away from where my office is because I now have the ability to work from home, which may be the reality going forward. So there's that overall, concept of if any time home ownership was going to be attractive, it seems like it would be right now, where there's the flexibility in many employers to work from home. Caveat, of course, is I don't mean to be insensitive to people who have been laid off or don't have the flexibility to work from home, but there's clearly a lot of people that can work from home. The second answer to that question is I'm looking at sales prices, okay? And it goes back to me, leaning on the lenders is, if something happens with purchase financing and people can't secure those loans, then we're clearly going to see a drop in sales prices because the buyers just simply aren't going to be able to secure the purchase financing, and they're not going to be able to make those offers, and sellers are going to have to adjust. But when you look at it, prices are pretty stable or they're going up, which tells me that people want to buy houses and they're willing to pay and pay a lot to enjoy homeownership. The rest of the stuff on pendings, I think that's more of a function of drop in inventory than in the ability and the desire for people to want to buy homes. And also just stuff that we're hearing from realtors, how do I get these, these tours going? How do I get people into properties? That's also telling me if they weren't asking those questions, that would tell me that, hey, buyers they're out. But they are asking us those questions, that we are getting a lot of pressure to work with the government to get things opened up. So I'm sensing that absolutely people want to buy. Plus, it's April. It's the time to get into home ownership. So long, rambling answer to your question. Hopefully that touched on a few things.
Well, and it did. Absolutely. Thank you. And we've got a couple questions coming in, but just to kind of tail off what you were just saying, any indication from folks on your end that maybe come May, beginning of May, that the regulations for showing occupied properties and things like that are going to change, hopefully ease up a little bit?
I listen to the governor every day. We're in touch with our county health departments because they're the ones that actually make the rules. And I'm your lobbyist. Okay. My job is to work with government. And in all my years working with you, I've never experienced a government agency like the county health department, because they do things. They're not like a city council where they give you a notice that something's coming. They give you an opportunity to weigh in. You can lobby them. These health departments, they're their own things, and they can make decisions like that. It's mind blowing. So I mention this because, I think the governor is trying to be as positive as possible. We've already seen things pushed from April 7th. Now we're looking at early May. I think it really just depends on the numbers. It's those 6 things that the governor, laid out last week. The 6 things that need to happen, whether it's hospital capacity, whether it's drugs. I don't know how much these protests that are happening in the Capitol are really going to move the needle on that. Especially when the media coverage is kind of indicting them a little bit and saying, well, they're associated with this fringe group or this fringe group. And frankly, I don't know if our legislature really is going to pay much attention to the protesters, because our legislature skews one way and the protesters another way. I don't know. I think the best way to predict that is just look at those numbers. And when the numbers start coming down, and when we start hearing from hospitals that, yeah, we've got some beds available, because think about this. We still live in California. There's always a chance of fires. There's always a chance of earthquakes. There's other stuff that can happen. So when we've got, hospitals that are, jammed with COVID-19 patients, they don't have the capacity to deal with, other kinds of terrible things that can happen. So in predicting, when are things going to open up, I would look at that kind of stuff. Look at those 6 things that the governor lined out. Next question.
Okay. Let's see. We have a couple of comments too. Buyers are waiting for prices to drop. You spoke a little bit to that. It sounds like maybe you want to touch on that again.
So it comes down to supply and demand. So let's talk about supply. Supply. There are 2 things that influence supply in this market. New construction, not happening right now, particularly if you want, and this is a functional microphone, by the way, so I can dramatically lean in when I want to emphasize something. There's no new construction, particularly if they want to buy a single family home, not happening. If they want to buy a condo or townhome, yeah, there's a little bit of that going on, but not right now. The second thing that influences demand, or supply are current homeowners. And if they're moving, okay, well, we've seen inventory come down in some of our markets. I know that there was a little bit of difference between last April, but it's not a flood of inventory. So in terms of a bunch of new construction changing things, or a whole bunch of, existing owners saying, I'm out of here, I don't see that happening. I mean, on COVID-19 specifically, this is a pandemic. It's all over the world. People are not going to sell their homes and move because they think they can get away from COVID-19, because guess what? It's everywhere. If anything, people are looking around their homes and saying, maybe this is kind of a nice place to live. So then we look at so if supply is fixed, the other variable is all about demand. Keep an eye on unemployment. If we see a huge spike in unemployment and people don't have the jobs to pay for those mortgages, if demand comes down, then guess what? On the supply side, those sellers, they're going to have to adjust their expectations as well. So you want to know what's going to happen with the prices? You keep your eye on unemployment, and you talk to your lender about interest rates and the availability of purchase financing. But as I sit here today in April, I'm clearly not seeing things come down. This is still a great place to live. COVID-19 is different than the terrible fires that we had in the North Bay. It's different than an earthquake that would bring down the bridges on 680. This is a crisis that's being caused because we can't leave our homes. So once the shelter in place is relaxed, we still have beautiful communities that we live in. We still have wonderful weather. We still have a very desirable place to achieve home ownership. I just don't see that, prices coming down if we maintain our jobs and we maintain access to purchase financing.
Okay. Questions here. This is a lending question, Jen, if you are willing. It says, will a person who applied for unemployment or PPP and or suffered a furlough be affected in their ability to qualify or purchase or obtain purchase financing?
And the quick answer to that is, in the short term, yes, it will impact them, but going forward, we just have to look at each individual on a case-by-case basis and see if it was, because it's different if they were furloughed versus laid off. So the situation could potentially change depending on what the actual scenario was for that individual person. But it's not a hard and fast no. Are still employed and furloughed, then they are still technically employed. So I would say just reach out to your lender if you have a specific person that is impacted by that, and have a conversation with us so that we can at least looks like, but know on a daily basis as the guidelines look like. So the answers could vary depending on when they're actually looking at buying.
Okay, great. Let's see. Again, a couple of comments. Anybody else have any questions? Unmute yourself or type in the chat box. There are counties that have lifted restrictions on showing, occupied properties. So,
but it ain't here.
I guess we can hope a little bit. It's tough. It is unpredictable, and I know that for essential services, they've got the 30 minutes before and after rules, but it's it's a very real issue to be dealing with the obstacle of putting an occupied home on the property or on the market. Excuse me. So that's
and it's
reality.
Going back to my observation about these health departments, if these health departments get wind of people blatantly violating rules, and that could be a neighbor, just please, I know it's a tough time, but please play by the rules, because these health departments, like I said earlier, they can change their minds instantly, and we could really be shut down.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, I had a quick question.
Go for it.
Just to get your expertise on this, when we think about how our agents are doing business now, and obviously they've had a change and they've had a pivot. Obviously that word has been overused in the last few weeks. However, in your expert opinion, what do you feel are some skill sets that agents should be learning right now that are going to stand the test of time once shelter in place is over?
Communication technology, figuring out what works for a variety of people that might have different communication preferences. Absolutely. The whole concept of the virtual tours, I think once this is over, people are going to realize, wait a minute, there's a lot easier ways of doing things than we used to do it. Absolutely. As the other skill set I would look at is, getting familiar with larger economic issues in the San Francisco Bay Area so you can see what's coming. Also, just to put in a plug for the education resources that NAR is making available, there's a whole bunch of self-study stuff you guys could be doing at home right now. Yeah, that's what I would do. And when you think about the whole work from home concept, if you're not already familiar with, e-signatures on documents, just get ready to do more things remotely and figure out your value. And by the way, caveat, I'm not a broker. Okay. So just, take whatever I'm saying as just a guy that's worked, for realtors for a long time, but not as advice from my broker, because I ain't a broker. But yeah, just figure out how can I be a value proposition to my clients. Like there was a mention here earlier about farming. How do you farm virtually? I don't know. Maybe that's where you can figure out the next cool thing is getting into individual neighborhoods without physically being in individual neighborhoods.
Good stuff, man. Thank you. Appreciate that.
We've got a question here from Kira. Can you kindly state again what the showing requirements are for occupied properties?
Don't show them in Alameda County. It's pretty, and Contra Costa County as well. It's pretty cut and dry. The rules say property must be vacant.
All right. Well, I think that sums it up. Yes, they must be vacant. Please don't do it, as you said. And thank you for stating that too, is that, because I think certainly we get the questions about, well, if they go away for the weekend, is that considered vacant?
Not vacant.
Yeah. Are they, if they're gone for 12 hours,
not
could
vacant.
someone come in? So yes, I want to, thank you especially for saying that, because the health department is, people are paying attention. I think they're hyper vigilant at this point, and one action could affect the whole.
And here's another thing. Now, not only am I not a broker, I'm also not an attorney. That's not going to stop me from sharing this observation. So let's say you do show an occupied property and your client gets sick. Hello, liability. Okay. I mean, someone gets sick, they die. I mean, come on. Were it not for my realtor taking me to this occupied property, even if they demanded that you did that, I mean, just the liability alone, even if they don't die, having someone sick for a few weeks or losing their job, it just, I mean, I trust me, I get it that this is a challenge for you to have to pivot, to use that term, during these times. But to me, the professional liability alone, not to mention the moral implications as well, figure out a way to do it virtually, please.
And Selma is saying they have to be gone for a minimum of 15 days. I think it's
I need to go back and look at the
intention of not moving back, I think is the more appropriate way of putting that.
And I believe we've got the CAR legal hotline, which is fantastic. California Association of Realtors, I've worked with you guys for a long time. I've seen a lot of things that the state association's done over the years. They have definitely stepped it up on this whole COVID-19 thing. So CAR.org, right there on their main page, there's a whole bunch of links. They've got great resources. Their legal team is on it. If you're curious about, okay, what exactly does this mean? I would hit up the attorneys, because again, we're talking about stuff here that could lead to liability for you.
Okay. Let's see. Any last questions?
Hey, David, I have a question. I didn't get a chance to type it up. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So we received a notification on email April 9th, I believe, that gave more detail in regards to photography. I think they made some notes about certain other I couldn't find it on the Bay East website in regards to that. It just refers back to the original county issuance about essential services. But is there a specific resource outside of just that email that was sent over to us?
So if you go to so this is where things get a little wiggly. If you go to the county health department's website, they've got some COVID-19 resources, including an FAQ. And this is where I got to be really careful about what I say. We have heard things from county officials that aren't necessarily reflected on the FAQ. So here's, going back to working with the health department. So the health department issues this shelter-in-place order, which is this long document that includes their list of essential services. And certain real estate activities were included in that original document, okay? And then on their website, they define some of these services on their FAQ, frequently asked questions. And that's where they talk about other real estate activities. I think appraisers are in there. I think home inspectors. Certain contracting work can happen if it deals with just structural issues. Like landscapers can go on a property and do their thing to remove like a tree that's at risk of falling and crushing someone, but they can't cut the grass just because it looks bad. So long story short is what the county has on its website and what they're actually allowing may be two different things. So I would just be really careful. What I can do is email to Erica a link to what our latest interpretation is and what we're getting from our attorneys. I can get that to Erica and she can then send it out to everybody else. Is that okay, Erica, if I send it to you?
Yeah, that would be great. I'm happy
Okay.
to send it out to everyone.
And just big time caveat, big asterisk thing here. What I share with you today, it could change tomorrow. So just heads up. The rules can change very quickly.
Okay, let's see. Any other questions here? We've got a lender question. Is there a higher cost for borrowers if they use an 80-10-10 type of loan?
So the fees might change by just a few $100. It's not a big difference in cost, and those fees are directly related to that second mortgage. So the origination fees on those are really minimal.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, well, we're just about at our time. If anybody has any last minute questions, type them in the chat box or unmute yourself. But while we're doing that, Dave, I want to thank you so much for your time this morning. I know you're slamming them in there back to back, but to have you exclusively for an hour has been a privilege, and we all appreciate, I'll speak for the group of us, you being here and your time and your insight and all of your hard work for our industry, for the people here. Oh boy, I'm getting questions. I have people asking for closing jokes. I have a question about clarification on Tom's question with Mike and our broker, Bill and Vicky. Oh, okay, yeah. So we do have clarification on Tom's question. So it's actually not a question, sorry. But we do have requests for last minute jokes. If you've got anything saved up that you can share with us. But I do thank you for all of your hard work and your time today and sharing this with us, and really just the relevance of the information that you're bringing to us, having the ability to put something together so quickly, because I mean, honestly, I love looking at market stats, but looking even 30 days back is at this point proving to be rather challenging. So super relevant information, and so appreciate that. So I will let you take it from there. Let's see, before closing joke, occupied property information, is that on the CAR website?
So there's a whole bunch of stuff on the CAR website. I think the most important thing on the CAR website is their COVID-19 hotline. They're doing a great job of keeping their resources up to date, but some of these things happen, they change so quickly that I would hit up their hotline. You can actually talk to a real person. It's a really good resource. I don't really have any about the jokes. Full disclosure, I suffer from low-grade Tourette syndrome. I can't really control what I say, and I'm pretty sure I've got early onset Alzheimer's, so I can't remember what I say. I've been told I have an infectious sense of humor. No, too soon.
Too soon. Too soon.
Too soon. Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to share with you.
Yeah.
Please let me know if there's something that we can do. I can't stress that enough. We're trying to anticipate what you guys need, but please let us know if we're either on the right track or the wrong track, or if there's anything we can do. david.s@bayeast.org. Stay healthy, you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Dave. Thanks, you guys, for joining us. Log on the rest of the week for the events. Check Switchboard in your calendars. Thank you.